visit a museum, we check out the art collection. The exhibitions, we want to know the name of the artist, and then we also check out the cafe and restaurants, souvenir shops, and then we will not forget to take a selfie for our Instagram. Now, sometimes we leave the museum complaining that the toilet is not flushing and the tickets are too expensive. Eugene Tan, Director of National Gallery Singapore. Is it your problem if the toilet is not flushing?
Absolutely. I think I think when we look at our visitors' experience, everything that happens in a museum, from the toilets to the cafes and restaurants, and of course to the exhibitions and the galleries as well, everything is of importance to us. So we try and make sure that everything is right. And we have different teams of people that look after different parts of the museum.
How many people do you have in your team?
We have about 400 people working at
400?
the museum. Yes. Well, we have quite a large museum. The total size of our two buildings is about 64,000 square meters. So about 200 of that is our front of house staff, security, cleaners that look after the toilets too. And then the other 200 are the back of house, including the curators and the programmers.
On the artistic direction.
Yes.
So what does a museum director do every day inside the office and outside of the office? Other than giving speeches during the opening and sometimes showing the royal families walking through an exhibition.
Where do you get that one from?
From National Gallery Singapore's Facebook. Make sure that you check it out. So I would like to kind of ask you a few questions. You were traveling a lot. Before coming to Singapore, you were on work trips. Is this kind of a regular thing, part of your work?
It's a typical of the fact that museum directors have to travel a lot. We travel for various reasons, the most important of which is for discussions for our exhibitions, both for loan negotiations as well as collaborations with other partner institutions. And then there's a travel to speak at conferences, present at major events, and then to attend important events such as this, the Art Basel Fair in Hong Kong, Biennales. Yes.
So you were in Sydney.
Yes, I was at the opening of the Biennial of Sydney 2 weeks ago, before going to Melbourne to attend a very interesting workshop put together by Tony Elwood at the National Gallery of Victoria on audience engagement. Yes.
I haven't seen that, so I check out my schedule and make sure that it's going to be in my itinerary as well. So here I have another image, stolen from your friend, Dorian Chung of M+.
Right.
He is the chief curator of M+, and he did a presentation as well on the role of a museum and how to build a museum. So I was there, and I'm fascinated by this image that he showed at his PowerPoint. I actually don't have the copyright, so we are going to ask Dorian. So in this slide, actually, he's kind of detailing the task of a museum director. And these are all the behind-the-scene works that people would never see when they go to see a museum, when they go to see an exhibition. People are not aware of the amount of work and effort you have to put into that. So this is from A to Z.
Right, right.
Is it, you share the same?
Yes, well, apart from the activity that we undertake that's specific to us being an art museum, people often also forget that museums are very large organizations today. As I mentioned, we have 400 people at the museum and 200 permanent staff, which is effectively a very large organization. So to make sure we have all the structures in place to organize, to run such a large organization is part of the amount of work that goes into running a museum too.
So for you personally, there's the artistic part and there's also the administrative part. Which is your favorite?
Well, I would say that the artistic part, the curatorial part is what got me into pursuing a career in the museum world. But equally, I think the other non-curatorial parts, the organizational parts are just as important, making sure that everything will run smoothly, all our staff understand what they're supposed to do, what the museum does.
In 21st century, a museum director's task is very different from what I learned 20 years ago back then from my textbooks. And we would like to talk about maybe digital strategies, because National Gallery Singapore is doing particularly well, very innovative in this aspect. Would you like to?
Yes. Well, I think we can't ignore the fact that the digital is kind of taking over a big part of our society. And we as museums have to learn what this means for what we do as well. So we have a team that looks at how to employ kind of digital technologies to enhance our visitors' experience, either in the exhibitions themselves or helping them navigate their way around the museum, providing them more information about the artworks, the buildings, and all of that. So we do that through our Gallery Explorer app, which is essentially
Yes.
our audio guide.
Yes. And in your app, you also have the iBeacon technology, right?
Yes, in fact, our app not only kind of provides useful information to help our visitors, we've also used it as a way for artists to produce works. So we have an unrealized project consisting of works by 3 artists, Ho Zunian, Erica Tan, and Heman Chong, who have made works that can only be experienced on this app and only at certain locations within the museums because it's kind of site-specific, and this makes use of the iBeacon technology.
So
yes.
you have to download the app before
Yes.
you can see the work.
And then it's for Erica's and Zunian's work, they take the form of video, but you have to be in specific locations, as I said, in the galleries before the videos unlock themselves.
It's almost like the virtual coming into the reality when you are once in the space.
Yeah, so it's kind of almost looking at the interstice between kind of the virtual and the real. So bringing the virtual world into the kind of real experience of the visiting the museum as well.
So as a museum director, it's also very important for you to handle these stakeholders, different stakeholders relationship, and how do you, is it your favorite part? How do you do that?
Well, luckily with this, I have the help of all my colleagues as well. I mean, we all collectively engage our different stakeholders from the government who provides a lot of our funding, the ministry, our board who we report to our public, our most important stakeholders perhaps. And this in itself is a very complex demographic.
And in average, how many emails do you receive a day?
More than 100, I think. So it's, yes, it piles up if I'm traveling and I don't get to answer them as quickly as I should.
So next year, Hong Kong M+ will be opening, and another big museum based in Hong Kong. So how are you going to build up an identity for National Gallery Singapore and collaborate with other institutions?
I think the more museums we have in Asia, the better it will be for the public. So as far as I understand, M+ seeks to examine art through the perspective of Hong Kong. Whereas for us, the focus is very much on Singapore and Southeast Asia as our starting point. So through our permanent galleries, we present the art histories of Singapore and Southeast Asia from the 19th century to the present. And then through our special exhibitions, we expand this to look at the world, but again, from the perspective of Southeast Asia.
No competitions?
We like to think of not competition, but collaborations between museums, and we see that very much as a way to go forward.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
So we can all be a proud citizen of our museums, but little do we know that the massive effort of a huge team and professionals putting into a museum and making it alive. Thank you, everybody.